Salam sejahtera, anda sedang menyaksikan Niaga AWANI bersama saya Nina Rozman dan sebentar sahaja lagi rakan tugas Nabilah Khaleeda dan Tehmina Kaoosji akan sertai untuk perkembangan seterusnya. Saya akan mulakan dengan laporan ini terlebih dahulu. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim menegaskan bahawa kerajaan Madani sentiasa memudah cara dan mencari kaedah terbaik serta pantas dalam menyelesaikan mana-mana masalah yang dihadapi pelabur. Menerusi hantaran di Facebook, Anwar berkata perkara itu dinyatakan semasa beliau menerima kunjungan hormat Presiden dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Micron Technology Incorporation, Datuk Sanjay Mehrotra. Dalam pertemuan itu, Anwar dan Sanjay telah bertukar pandangan mengenai keperluan-keperluan utama dalam pembangunan industri semikonduktor di Malaysia. Turut disentuh ialah kepentingan pembangunan bakat tempatan serta faktor-faktor yang menyumbang kepada kelancaran operasi kilang-kilang berteknologi tinggi di Malaysia. Micron adalah sebuah syarikat berpangkalan di Amerika Syarikat dan merupakan peneraju dalam penyelesaian memori inovatif yang mengubah cara dunia menggunakan maklumat. Perdana Menteri berkata Malaysia kini pada kedudukan amat strategik dalam ekosistem semikonduktor dan kecerdasan buatan global. Sehubungan itu, Anwar berkata bagi mengukuhkan daya tarikan negara dalam pelbagai sektor ekonomi, usaha giat dilaksanakan seperti digariskan dalam Pelan Induk Perindustrian Baharu 2030 dan Strategi Semikonduktor Nasional. Dalam hantaran berasingan, Anwar memaklumkan telah menerima kunjungan hormat delegasi Dewan Perdagangan Islam Malaysia DPIM diketuai Presidennya Datuk Muhammad Sahar Makdin. Perdana Menteri berkata dalam pertemuan itu, beliau dan DPIM sempat membincangkan beberapa cadangan terkait inisiatif pembangunan ekonomi mencakupi konsep wakaf dan penggunaan kecerdasan buatan. Beliau menghargai cadangan dikemukakan DPIM yang selari dengan hasrat kerajaan supaya Pelan Transformasi Ekonomi Bumiputera 2035 mendapat suntikan idea bernas dan sokongan pelaksanaan daripada pemain industri seperti Dewan-Dewan Perniagaan dan Perdagangan. Malaysia dijangka dapat membangunkan chip dan unit pemprosesan grafik GPU buatan Malaysia dalam tempoh 5 hingga 10 tahun akan datang. Menteri Ekonomi Rafizi Ramli berkata negara boleh merealisasikan industri itu dengan memanfaatkan sektor hiliran dan tidak hanya bergantung kepada pembuatan semikonduktor di peringkat pemasangan dan pengujian.
Katanya Malaysia bukan sahaja mewujudkan sektor ekonomi bernilai tinggi yang memenuhi permintaan. Malah Malaysia boleh menjadi peserta global kerana negara-negara lain turut memerlukan pusat data. Beliau berkata demikian semasa sesi bual bicara santai bertajuk From Made in Malaysia to Made by Malaysia di Forum Ekonomi Malaysia FEM 2025 di Ibu Negara pada Khamis. Jelas Rafizi, Malaysia dijangka menjadi kuasa besar pusat data global dan mahu menyokongnya melalui tenaga boleh baharu. Malaysia juga sedang memuktamadkan pusingan bidaan solar berskala besar kelima LSS-5 dan dijangka disusuli dengan LSS-6. Katanya lagi Malaysia seharusnya berupaya membolehkan kapasiti tenaga boleh baharu berkembang dengan lebih cepat daripada sebelum ini.
Dalam suasana pasaran saham yang sentiasa dinamik, pelabur sering tertanya-tanya bagaimanakah prestasi pasaran saham tempatan di awal tahun ini. Apakah sektor menjadi perhatian pelabur dan paling penting, apa strategi terbaik untuk menghadapi cabaran bersama? Dengan itu saya mempersilakan tetamu yang tidak asing lagi, Imran Yassin Mat Yusof merupakan Ketua MIPF Research untuk mendalami beberapa aspek. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Imran kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Pertama sekali untuk kita meliti, bagaimanakah prestasi pasaran saham minggu ini dan apa yang Imran boleh beri kesimpulan mengenai prestasi pasaran saham tempatan pada awal tahun ini?
Selamat pagi Nina. Semalam kita lihat bagaimana FBM KLCI tutup 14 mata lebih rendah atau 0.8%, dan minggu ini tutup lebih kurang 2% lebih rendah daripada paras tutup Jumaat lepas. Jadi walaupun bagaimanapun kita lihat masih lagi pada paras psikologi 1600 lah. Jadi kita boleh lihatlah bagaimana awal tahun ini prestasi FBM KLCI kurang memberangsangkan, ada sedikit kelemahan pada pasaran saham tempatan. Tapi bukan saja di Malaysia tapi pasaran serantau kecuali Singapura. Ini disebabkan oleh sentimen pelabur yang mengambil langkah lebih berhati-hati memandangkan Donald Trump akan mengangkat sumpah sebagai Presiden Amerika Syarikat pada 20 Januari. Jadi kita lihat bagaimana polisi-polisinya dan apa yang telah dikatakan atau mention, announce dan sebagainya, melihatkan kepada polisi-polisi yang mungkin akan tidak begitu positif untuk serantau ini. Di samping itu, beberapa data ekonomi di Amerika Syarikat juga menunjukkan ekonomi yang masih teguh. Dan ini menyebabkan pasaran untuk menjangka bahawa cuma ada satu sahaja pemotongan kadar pinjaman Amerika. Jadi ini memberi tekanan kepada pasaran ekuiti. Prestasi pasaran ekuiti banyak bergantung pada kadar pinjaman lebih lagi di Amerika Syarikat. Jadi jika ada pemotongan, itu adalah positif, tetapi jika ada tiada pemotongan atau ada kenaikan, itu adalah satu faktor yang negatif lah.
Seperti yang dapat dirangkumkan, melihat kepada prestasi pada awal bulan ini, kalau kita lihat pada semalam dan juga minggu ini menunjukkan prestasi pasaran bursa sedikit memberangsangkan. Ini kerana pelabur dalam keadaan yang berhati-hati dan juga kita melihat kepada kadar faedah yang mungkin diturunkan ataupun akan dipotongkan dalam tempoh sekali, yang ini juga akan beri tekanan kepada pasaran ekuiti. Tetapi secara realitinya, adakah prestasi pasaran ini menepati ataupun konsisten kepada jangkaan awal pasaran, dan bagaimana untuk kita bandingkan prestasi pasaran tempatan kalau kita bandingkan dengan pasaran serantau, Imran?
Kalau kita lihat jangkaan, memang kami jangkakan ada sedikit ketidaktentuan lah kepada prestasi pasaran saham tempatan, dan kami juga menjangkakan ini adalah sama untuk pasaran serantau. Kami menjangkakan keadaan yang ketidaktentuan ini akan berlarut untuk suku pertama ini. Ini disebabkan oleh kemasukan Donald Trump sebagai Presiden Amerika Syarikat pada 20 Januari ini, dan polisi-polisi beliau dijangka akan mungkin akan memberi impak yang negatif kepada serantau ini. Jadi kita boleh lihat ketidaktentuan itu. Jadi untuk itu kita boleh lihat bagaimana pelabur mengambil langkah yang berhati-hati.
Dan apakah antara sektor-sektor yang mendapat tumpuan pelabur pada minggu ini, Imran?
Untuk minggu ini hanya dua sektor yang menunjukkan prestasi yang baik, iaitu sektor pembinaan. Kalau kita lihat KLCI Construction Index, ia naik 2.9%, dan lagi satu sektor adalah sektor REIT, tapi cuma 0.3%. Kami percaya ini disebabkan oleh prospek sektor pembinaan yang teguh. Jadi kalau kita lihat lebih lagi dengan termeteranya perjanjian Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone, jadi dengan ini kami menjangkakan projek pembinaan akan terus meningkat dengan projek-projek infrastruktur dan projek-projek pembangunan industrial seperti data center dan sebagainya. Jadi kita boleh lihat bagaimana pelabur-pelabur mengambil langkah yang positif terhadap umpamanya JS-SEZ. Inilah sektor yang banyak dilihat penjualan adalah sektor kesihatan. Ini disebabkan pelabur mengambil untung syarikat-syarikat sarung tangan, glove. Mungkin disebabkan jangkaan permintaan mungkin tidak pada paras yang dijangkakan, dan juga pada awal tahun dan akhir tahun lepas, kita lihat bagaimana sektor sarung tangan ini mendapat tumpuan oleh kerana tarif yang akan dikenakan pada China dan sebagainya. Mungkin ini apa yang kita katakan over exuberance lah.
Dan kalau kita meliti keadaan pasaran ketika ini, apa yang telah dikatakan kepada kami tadi, Imran berkata prestasi pasaran dijangka akan berada dalam keadaan yang rendah sehingga suku pertama, dan ini adalah antara sektor-sektor yang akan memacu pertumbuhan ekonomi. Tapi bagaimana untuk kita meliti pada pendapat Imran, apakah antara perkara yang perlu dipertimbangkan oleh pelabur pada masa ini?
Untuk masa ini pelabur perlu lihat satunya adalah daripada segi geopolitik lah. Kemenangan Donald Trump dan polisi beliau akan laksanakan, jadi pelabur perlu lihat lebih mendalam kepada itu. Seperti saya cakap, mungkin akan memberikan impak yang negatif. Jadi di situ pelabur-pelabur mungkin boleh lihat kepada sektor-sektor yang defensif lah, yang memberikan pendapatan yang stabil, yang memberikan dividen kepada pelabur dan mengurangkan risiko pelaburan. Contohnya sektor perbankan, sektor REIT dan syarikat-syarikat yang bersifat defensif seperti TNB dan sebagainya. antara yang lain mungkin boleh dilihat adalah faktor-faktor yang mungkin positif, faktor-faktor yang positif seperti baru minggu ini JS-SEZ itu adalah satu faktor yang positif. Kita lihat bagaimana JS-SEZ akan memberi dan mendorong prestasi syarikat pembangunan ataupun syarikat hartanah dan sebagainya.
Walaupun kita berada pada kedudukan awal tahun tapi meliti bergerak ke hadapan, apakah antara strategi jangka panjang yang lebih relevan untuk kita lakukan dalam keadaan pasaran semasa ini, Imran?
Untuk strategi pelabur, seperti saya cakap tadi, dijangkakan tahun ini adalah satu tahun di mana pasaran saham akan berada pada tahap yang tidak menentulah, volatile lah. Maksudnya mungkin ada faktor yang positif akan menaikkan pasaran saham, tetapi satu dua faktor negatif akan menunjukkan penjualan ataupun pullback lah pada market. Jadi di sini tahun ini mungkin pelabur-pelabur perlu memberi tumpuan kepada syarikat-syarikat yang mempunyai fundamental yang teguh. Di sini seperti saya cakap dengan tadi, pelabur boleh lihat kepada sektor defensif, maksudnya pendapatan yang stabil dan juga memberikan dividen, dan dividen akan mengurangkan risiko pelaburan dan memberikan sedikit pulangan sektor perbankan dan sebagainya. Di samping itu, untuk masa yang terdekat, itu untuk jangka panjang, untuk masa terdekat, pelabur-pelabur boleh mengambil kesempatan kepada mungkin ada katalis-katalis yang mungkin akan ada pada tahun ini.
Dan Imran, mungkin saya nak tambah sedikit. Bagaimana untuk kita meliti antara sektor-sektor yang tidak diberi perhatian seperti Imran kongsikan, iaitu antara perkara-perkara strategi yang pelabur boleh lakukan dalam keadaan ataupun pasaran, ketidaktentuan pasaran ini. Kita harus meliti sektor-sektor defensif. Tapi bagaimana pula dengan kita bercakap mengenai keseluruhan pasaran, antara sektor-sektor pun industri yang kurang mendapat perhatian pelabur ataupun jangkaan ataupun prospeknya agak rendah berbanding sektor-sektor lain. Apa yang perlu kita lakukan untuk pastikan pertumbuhan yang kita boleh cakap adil?
Untuk sektor-sektor yang kurang dilihatkan atau apa yang kita panggilkan laggard, lebih-lebih prestasi tidak memberangsangkan pada tahun lepas, umpamanya sektor consumer lah. Jadi kita kena lihat setiap sektor ini apakah yang mungkin akan memberikan faktor yang mungkin memberi push kepada pendapatan syarikat di dalam sektor tersebut lah. Jadi ada setengah sektor yang mungkin kurang dilihat oleh pelabur sebelum ini, tapi dengan mempunyai fundamental yang atau prospek yang begitu baik, mungkin kita akan lihat pelabur mungkin akan masuk semula kepada sektor-sektor ini. Dan salah satu sektornya adalah sektor consumer lah. Sektor consumer kami menjangka pada tahun ini akan mencapai pendapatan yang lebih baik dan juga prestasi yang lebih baik daripada tahun lepas. Antara faktor yang akan mendorong adalah umpamanya kenaikan gaji penjawat awam, EPF akaun 3 dan di mana inflasi juga yang terkawal. Jadi kami menjangkakan sektor consumer, lebih-lebih apa yang kita panggilkan consumer staple, syarikat seperti QL Resources dan sebagainya, di mana rakyat masih pengguna memerlukan bahan-bahan ruji lah. Jadi di sini kita menjangkakan sektor tersebut ada prospek yang lebih baik lah.
Baik, itu adalah ulasan lanjut mengenai prestasi awal tahun ini dan bagaimanakah prospek terkini pasaran. Sekali lagi saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Inan Yassin Mat Yusof, merupakan Ketua MIDF Research, dan saudara-saudara, setiap perkongsian ini akan kami rangkumkan dalam astroawani.com. Baik, kita akan teruskan dengan perkembangan lanjut di mana pasaran kargo udara global menyaksikan pertumbuhan permintaan yang kukuh pada November 2024 dengan jumlah kargo tan bagi setiap kilometer meningkat sebanyak 8.2% berbanding tahun sebelumnya. Persatuan Pengangkutan Udara Antarabangsa IATA dalam satu kenyataan berkata, peningkatan tersebut menandakan pertumbuhan bulan ke-16 berturut-turut. Menurut IATA, kapasiti diukur dalam kargo yang tersedia tan bagi setiap kilometer meningkat sebanyak 4.6% berbanding November 2023. Sementara itu, Ketua Pengarahnya Willie Walsh berkata setelah mempertimbangkan semua faktor, prestasi kargo udara dijangka menutup tahun 2024 dengan catatan menguntungkan. Walaupun prestasi kukuh ini sangat berkemungkinan berterusan sehingga 2025, terdapat beberapa risiko negatif yang perlu dipantau dengan teliti. Ini termasuk inflasi, ketidakpastian geopolitik dan ketegangan perdagangan. Dalam pada itu, IATA berkata jumlah permintaan penumpang global diukur dalam hasil penumpang bagi setiap kilometer meningkat sebanyak 8.1% pada November 2024 berbanding bulan yang sama pada 2023. Katanya jumlah kapasiti diukur dalam tempat duduk yang tersedia bagi setiap kilometer meningkat sebanyak 5.7% tahun ke tahun, manakala faktor beban pada November sebanyak 83.4% meningkat 1.9% berbanding tahun sebelumnya. Menurut IATA, permintaan antarabangsa meningkat sebanyak 11.6% berbanding November 2023 serta kapasiti meningkat 8.6% tahun ke tahun dan faktor beban meningkat 2.3% kepada 83.4% berbanding tempoh yang sama pada 2023. Sementara itu, permintaan domestik meningkat sebanyak 3.1% tahun ke tahun, kapasiti meningkat 1.5% tahun ke tahun dan faktor beban 1.2% lebih tinggi pada 83.5% berbanding November 2023. Amid increasing trade uncertainty, Singapore and Malaysia have set a good example of how cooperation can spur potential growth. A year since the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding MOU, the two countries finally signed the long-anticipated Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone JS-SEZ agreement on 7 January. The ambitious initiative aims to tap into the two countries' comparative advantage, which is Malaysia's vast land and energy resources as well as its labour's potential along with Singapore's capital and technology. Ultimately, this is just the beginning of a long-term ambitious initiative, which we believe the SEZ has significant economic potential to be unleashed. The key is how to ensure a smooth and timely implementation to achieve a win-win outcome. And for that, I welcome you. Our guest ready on the line is Yun Liu, ASEAN Economist, HSBC. I want to say thank you very much, Yun, for joining me. Firstly, talking about JS-SEZ, this is a very good news for our country, for both of the countries. Firstly, maybe you can share with us what some of the unique economic advantages does the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone JS-SEZ offer compared to existing zones in ASEAN, and how can it leverage its strategic location to outcompete established economic hubs like Shenzhen or even Dubai?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Good morning. Finally, Malaysia and Singapore have signed the Special Economic Zone here, the SEZ. I mean, this is quite a milestone in the sense that it's actually, collaboration between two countries. I mean, especially in the face of rising trade uncertainty, it's very precious. It very much signifies, how the cooperation between the states can mitigate some of the risks here and spur potential growth here. For the JS-SEZ, I don't necessarily see it as a competitor or rivalry to other SEZ, and I think for other SEZs it actually offers quite good lessons for the JS-SEZ to tap on. So for example, the Shenzhen one, I think the infrastructure connectivity is quite important. We have seen so many significant, a number of Hong Kong residents going to Shenzhen for a weekend trip, and I think that infrastructure connectivity is very much the game changer here, which, for the JS-SEZ, we all very much waited for the implementation of the RTS, which I think it could be a game changer here.
And we also will take a look at the investor diversion amid geopolitical tension. This is great news, but it's also important for us to consider all the opportunity, including the risk. With rising geopolitical tensions and a potential shift in global supply chains, how attractive is the JS-SEZ for companies seeking alternative to regions like China, and what role do geopolitical alliances such as ASEAN's neutrality play in making it a preferred choice for investors?
Yeah, I mean, the FDI diversion to ASEAN, it really, happened actually way before the establishment of JS-SEZ, right? I mean, very much since the U.S.-China trade tensions, we have seen a large of quality and consistent FDI diversion to Southeast Asia, and then very much depends on which country we're talking about, what comparative advantage they have. And for example, here for Malaysia, it really has been an outperformer, from an FDI perspective in ASEAN since the end of 2021 in terms of the FDI commitments coming to Malaysia, and also the sector, the strategic sector and quality investment as well. And I think one thing for investors here, I mean, geopolitical tensions are quite important in consideration, but I think for ASEAN, there's also quite a lot of strength within ASEAN. So it's also important to look within ASEAN. There has been quite a lot of structural reforms and transformations. We're talking about skilling up your labor force. We're talking about improving infrastructure connectivity, talking about favorable government policies, and some of the pre-existing industry clusters in Southeast Asia. So, when we look at it from an FDI angle, it very much it reflects a confluence of factors. And I think ASEAN still remains in a good position.
And as you mentioned, geopolitical consideration is important, but it's also essential to focus more, or we can say that further into our internal strength and impact of China's economic slowdown as well. If I can take this point, given China's economic slowdown, what industries are most likely to shift investment to JS-SEZ, and how can the zone capitalize on this opportunity while ensuring diversification and avoiding over-reliance on a single market or even sector?
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing quite a large chunk of investment, flowing through the data center investment in Johor, and then for SEZ, it very much aims to get broad-based sort of investments. So we're talking about especially the high value-added manufacturing here. Talking about semiconductor supply chain, we're talking about aerospace manufacturing, and just 2 days ago, there were some tax incentive announced, which is special corporate tax rate and also a special personal income tax rate. And when we see it, I mean, and very much, the details are in the devil. A lot of these incentives are geared towards, encouraging investment to high value added investment and in manufacturing. So I think for SEZ, we've been talking a lot about cost optimization, which is very important, but it's not the only thing. It's also about how to climb up the value chain, and especially in the manufacturing sector for Malaysia.
And that is a very important focus. And talking about also external factor with US political dynamics and trade war 2.0, if I may add, if Donald Trump returns to the White House and reignites protectionist policies, how can the JS-SEZ capitalize on a potential trade war 2.0 to attract multinational corporations, and what policies or incentives should be implemented to mitigate the risk of being caught in the crossfire of such geopolitical conflicts?
Yeah, there's still a large degree of uncertainty as to the tariff policies introduced, by the incoming U.S. administration here. I mean, in terms of the magnitude of the tariffs, to whom is going to be applied on, what sectors we're talking about, is it going to be targeted, is it going to be universal? So there's still a lot of uncertainty. But I think as I mentioned, I think for the FDI part, we should not be carried away by all this tariff rhetorics, and instead, I think look within ASEAN and look within, say, for Malaysia. I think there's still quite a lot of good strength, a good momentum. So the strength within Malaysia, keep pushing up, some of the reforms that we're seeing. And I think for Malaysia, two very key things here we're talking about. One is really about talent training, upskilling your labor force to be prepared to work in the strategic sectors, and the other one is infrastructure connectivity. So I think these two are quite important, are two priorities for Malaysia.
And I also want to dive deep further within the incentive and goals of JS-SEZ. with the offering significant incentive like a 5% corporate tax rate for 15 years and reduced personal income tax for skilled workers. Do you think these measures are sufficient to attract high-value investment? And what other factors or policies could be critical to achieving the zone's ambitious goals of creating a target of 20,000 skilled jobs and securing 100 projects within the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, the SEZ is a very ambitious long-term initiative. We're seeing some of the, goals announced, which I think is a good starting point. The tax incentives are very important. I mean, especially for a lot of the investors, and especially say if we look at if we compare the corporate tax rate in the SEZ and also, with Malaysia and Singapore, it is quite attractive. But I mean, this is not an overnight project. This is a long-term, project that requires years of proactive efforts by both authorities. So I think, timely implementation and, a lot more policy incentives and clarity are quite important to ensure, this is a win-win outcome for both Malaysia and Singapore.
Considering the external factors and also internal strength, and I also added as Malaysian leader for ASEAN 2025, take a look on the level of regional integration and ASEAN unity. How does the JS-SEZ fit within ASEAN's broader economy integration goals, and what synergies could it create with other members' nations? Could the JS-SEZ set a precedent for similar cross-border zones with ASEAN, and what lessons might other regions draw from its development?
Yeah, I think for other SEZs here, one thing that I just mentioned about, which is, Shenzhen, I think the policy incentives are quite important, but then it's also about, ways how to facilitate the free flow of not only goods, but also people as well. For Hong Kong residents, they have been making so many weekend trips to Shenzhen because of that infrastructure connectivity. It's much easier, it's less hassle for people to go. So I think that's also one good thing that the JS-SEZ can learn from. So that's why I very much have my eyes on the implementation of the RTS, easing the traffic congestions in Causeway to spur really private consumption. I mean, especially for Johor here.
And again, I would say thank you very much to Yum Liu, ASEAN Economist HSBC, for this insightful discussion. And definitely all of our discussion here will be featured in astroawani.com and across all social media platforms. Rakuten Trade meramalkan Mahsing Group Berhad mencatatkan untung bersih RM286.2 juta pada tahun kewangan 2025 disokong jualan yang belum dibilkan sebanyak RM2.76 bilion sehingga September 2024 serta periktirafan hasil lebih tinggi daripada penyiapan projek yang sedang dijalankan. Katanya kumpulan itu melancarkan 4 projek pada 2024 dengan kesemuanya berada di kawasan Lembah Kelang. TA Securities memberikan nilai wajar kepada pengendali rangkaian kafe Oriental Kopi Holdings Berhad pada 62 sen. Penilaian tanpa penarafan tersebut adalah lebih tinggi sebanyak 40.9% daripada harga tawaran awam permulaan IPO 28 sen sesaham, dengan kumpulan itu bakal disenaraikan di pasaran ASEAN Bursa Malaysia pada 23 Januari 2025. Pengeluar sarang burung MyBN Berhad kini berdepan tekanan kewangan dan operasi berikutan penangguhan ekspor sarang burungnya ke China. Penangguhan ekspor sementara oleh Jabatan Perkhidmatan Veteriner Malaysia DVS itu berkuat kuasa pada 25 Disember 2024 susulan kebimbangan mengenai penularan penyakit Newcastle NB di Malaysia. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astroawani.com serta dagangnews.com. Baik, niaga awani akan teruskan bawa perkembangan pada jam ini dengan untuk kita teliti bagaimanakah pergerakan ataupun prestasi nilai mata wang ringgit berbanding US dollar Amerika, termasuk juga dengan untuk kita perbandingkan bersama dengan negara-negara ASEAN seperti negara jiran iaitu Singapura. Dan beliti kepada prestasi ringgit, semalam Governor Datuk Seri Abdul Rashid Ghaffar berkata ringgit bergerak dalam hala tuju yang betul, mencerminkan asas ekonomi yang kukuh dan prospek pertumbuhan negara untuk beberapa tahun akan datang. Beliau percaya ringgit akan terus disokong oleh penurunan berterusan perbezaan kadar faedah dengan Amerika Syarikat dan negara lain serta keyakinan pelabur yang semakin meningkat. Ringgit mengakhiri urus niaga Khamis dengan lebih rendah berbanding dolar Amerika Syarikat susut ke paras 4.5005 atau 5055 dan itu adalah prestasi nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding US dollar pada waktu penutup hari semalam. Untuk kita saksikan bagaimanakah prestasi nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding US dollar pada pagi, setakat pagi ini lebih kurang 10 Januari 2025, ia berada pada paras 4.4945. Dan untuk kita meliti bagaimanakah prestasi nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding US dollar dalam tempoh seminggu sehinggalah ia mencapai pada tahap terkini pada pagi, setakat pagi ini, kita meliti nilai ringgit Malaysia sebenarnya mengalami pergerakan atau prestasi yang naik turun. Apabila graf ini menunjukkan iaitu graf line ke bawah, ia menunjukkan nilai ringgit Malaysia ia kukuh berbanding US dollar. Tapi apabila kita lihat graf ini berada ke atas, menunjukkan nilai ataupun prestasi ringgit Malaysia lebih lemah berbanding US dollar. Dan ini adalah dalam tempoh terdekat untuk kita saksikan bagaimanakah prestasi nilai ringgit Malaysia dalam tempoh seminggu. Dan antara yang tertinggi yang telah dicatatkan dalam tempoh seminggu adalah berada pada paras 4.4862 dan antara yang terendah adalah 4.5176. Dan ini juga merupakan antara julat pergerakan nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding US dollar pada minggu ini. Dan saya akan beralih untuk kita saksikan perbandingan nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding iaitu mata wang Singapura dollar. Di sini kalau kita saksikan setakat pagi ini ia berada pada paras 3.28563 dan sekarang adalah awal tahun Januari 2025 dan kalau kita lihat prestasi dalam tempoh setahun sehinggalah Januari tahun ini daripada tahun 2024 kita dapat saksikan nilai ringgit Malaysia dengan graf ini menunjukkan penurunan, mencerminkan nilai ringgit Malaysia lebih kukuh berbanding Singapura dolar dan kita lihat dalam tempoh setahun daripada tahun lepas sehinggalah awal tahun 2025 antara nilai yang tertinggi telah direkodkan oleh Malaysia berbanding US dollar berada lebih kurang 3.2031 dan antara yang terendah nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding Singapura dolar adalah 3.5592 dan ini adalah prestasi nilai ringgit Malaysia berbanding US dollar termasuk juga dengan Singapura dolar yang dapat kita saksikan setakat pagi ini dan dalam tempoh terdekat. Dan saya akan beralih kepada prestasi pasaran saham tempatan untuk kita saksikan. Hari ini adalah hari terakhir pada minggu ini. Kalau kita lihat pada penutupan semalam Khamis petang, niaga hadapan Fuksi Bursa Malaysia KSCI di Bursa Malaysia Derivatif ditutup tinggi pada Selasa seiring dengan peningkatan di pasaran tunai asas dan pada penutup dagangan kontrak Januari 2025 menaik 6.5 mata kepada 1630.0. Februari 2025 meningkat 7 mata kepada 1634.50 dan Mac 2025 menokok 6 mata kepada 1617.50 dan Jun 2025 menambah 4 mata kepada 1622.50 dan itu adalah prestasi penutup prestasi FBM KSCI dan pasaran pada ketika pagi ini ia berada pada paras 1603.95. Ini adalah prestasi pembukaan yang mengalami peningkatan pada 3.14 atau 0.20%. Dan kalau kita meliti bagaimanakah prestasi ataupun pergerakan Bursa Malaysia dalam tempoh 5 hari daripada Isnin hinggalah Jumaat pagi ini, kita dapat saksikan seperti yang dikatakan oleh pakar MIDF Research sendiri, iaitu prestasi pergerakan FBMK ASEAN pada minggu ini kurang memberansakkan. Kalau anda dapat saksikan graf ini menurun, menunjukkan pergerakan ataupun prestasi Bursa Malaysia pada minggu ini mengalami penurunan. Namun kalau kita lihat pergerakan dalam tempoh julat, prestasi Bursa Malaysia antara yang terendah pada minggu ini dicatatkan pada 1600.81 dan antara yang tertinggi adalah 1628.54 dan ini adalah prestasi Bursa Malaysia yang dapat kita saksikan dalam tempoh 5 hari dan setakat pagi ini lebih kurang jam 9.22 pagi pada 10 Januari 2025. Dan sudah tentu kami akan sentiasa bawakan perkembangan iaitu pasaran, ekonomi dan juga perniagaan untuk anda saksikan bagaimanakah faktor-faktor ini mempengaruhi ekonomi dan kita juga lihat kepada sosial. Dan selepas ini yang akan bawakan perkembangan seterusnya, kita akan bersama Nabilah, Khaleeda dan juga Terkini Kaoosji. Jangan ke mana-mana, kita berhenti rehat seketika dan kembali selepas ini.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Cara kita mendapat berita kian berubah. Melalui media sosial maupun saluran digital yang lain serta kaca TV. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini.
Kita buat sesuatu yang berbeza.
Teraskan acuan verifikasi yang diamalkan supaya setiap fakta adalah sahih. Daripada analisis pelbagai sudut yang mendalam, laporan-laporan khas dan perbincangan yang membina negara. Inklusif, suara rakyat kami ajukan. Keseimbangan persepsi kami pastikan. Kerana setiap cerita mempunyai impak yang tersendiri dan perlu dibawa dengan penelitian yang terperinci. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada. Saluran berita paling dipercayai di Malaysia.
JDT terus menguasai Liga. Belum tiba waktunya untuk berpuas hati. Cantik Hari Fiber. Sabah ganas mengejar kedudukan tertinggi. Dari Sadir Ramadhani, mereka perlu buktikan kekuatan menentang pendahulu Liga. Sokonglah sepenuhnya demi Liga kita. Liga Super secara langsung di Astro.
Apa signifikan dengan pengumuman ataupun berita yang keluar dari media China ini berkaitan dengan hasrat Malaysia untuk menyertai gabungan BRICS?
Kita mau dapat lebih banyak umpamanya pelaburan daripada negara China.
Kalau melihat kepada Akta Kanak-Kanak 2001, adakah kita terlalu lambat untuk melihat proses untuk meminda Akta sejak ada?
Kita perlu ada penyelarasan. Kita tak mahu bekerja secara silo.
All right, thank you for tuning in on AWANI. Right now, we'll be discussing the key trends and also challenges in Malaysia's property, reflecting last year, 2024. And we also want to look at this year, 2025, looking ahead for this year. So we have the right authority to discuss on this. Joining me right now on the line is Surveyor Sulaiman Sahir, the Director of Research at Rahim & Co International, Sdn Bhd. Good morning, Assalamualaikum.
Good morning, Assalamualaikum. Nice to be back here today.
Amazing, amazing. All right. To recap, like I mentioned earlier, firstly, Sulaiman, 2024 has been a dynamic year for the property market. Can you actually show or highlight the key trends and also factors that influence the market's performance this past year as a whole? Like, were there any unexpected challenges or opportunities that stood out for you?
The property market, that is, performed rather well. Actually, it is actually one of the best performing years if we were to look into the history for the past 20 years. It actually grew and grew even more compared to 2023's growth. But of course, it is not as high in terms of percentage growth compared to 2023. from 21 because of the pandemic effect. So because of that low base effect, if we were to just ignore that for a while, just comparatively where the market is actually is right now, the growth looks to be resilient. It has actually grown, and this time around, the growth in terms of property market transactions as an indicator of activity, it grew across every core segments in the market, be it residential, commercial, industrial, even development lands and agricultural properties as well. So the market has actually grown very, very healthily for the first 9 months. The official data has actually recorded above 6% growth in terms of number of transactions, and the total of transactions value, all the cumulative value of transactions actually grew even more at 14%. So the market looks to be going very well in terms of statistically speaking. But concerns in the market is still there, is still prevalent. You can see buyers, the sentiment amongst buyers is actually still very cautious. There's a lot of concerns in terms of the geopolitical uncertainties and especially with the coming online with some of the subsidy rationalization that is expected this year. So the numbers, one side is actually saying quite well, but buyers' sentiment is actually rather mixed. But commercial, in terms of the businesses and whatnot, the index, MIER's index of business conditions index, have actually improved to above 100 points, which is actually showing that the confidence is there. The confidence has actually come back, and now it's how do we are looking to be having hopefully another good year in 2025. Be it more gradual, but it will be another year to look forward to.
Okay, so basically you can recap that it has been doing well and has been growing positively and also healthily. But I have a curiosity where the various economic policies implemented in 2024, such as the changes in interest rates and also government incentives, how have these policies impacted the property market, in your opinion? And do you think these measures have been effective in stabilizing or stimulating the market as a whole?
The government have been accommodative for the growth of the nation. That's the hands down. But the focus that the government has actually put more focus on is actually growing on the fundamentals of the economy in terms of income levels, in terms of employment generation and investments. The direct property incentives or programs, it has been around. But I would say that it is pretty much similar to the one that we have actually had all this while. It is still important. It is very important, especially for the affordable housing schemes, incentives for first-time home buyers, iMiliki program, the credit guarantee scheme for eligible buyers. Those are actually important, but in terms of spurring or making sure that the fundamentals of demand continues to grow even further, we need to focus on some of the soft infrastructure. I think that's where the focus on the economy as a whole, as well as the income level and the investors' confidence in setting up new businesses in the country. How do we make sure that the office market or the retail market as a commercial hub continues to be strong? These are the overall support that needs to continue to make sure that we remain relevant and competitive regionally.
But however, Sulaiman, there's anticipations that shows that there will be a slower global economic growth in 2025 that will impact the demand for high-end, also mid-range residential properties in Malaysia. And what can you say about that?
That's where we appreciate no two properties are exactly the same, at least from location. You can't have two properties occupying the same space. But the market, how it behaves, is very much localized to the specific areas. With the global economic trajectory, which is still stable, it is still moving forward, but We do expect there's still continued challenges globally in terms of on the economic front. But Malaysia's projection is still to continue next year in terms of growth. So we expect things to be still stable. The growth is going to be more gradual amidst continually cautious sentiment amongst buyers. But if you look at the question on residential properties, whether it's the high-end properties and the mass market, this is where we can see a differentiation between the two segments, if you like. The mass market, where the demand drivers are predominantly domestic purchases or local Malaysian buyers, especially for the owner-occupiers or actually buying for their own consumption. Those in established neighborhoods, that is, next to an LRT station or whatnot, or transport hub, these would continue to hold. The demand will continue to hold. We are still a growing nation, and our employment numbers are actually stable also, our employment numbers nationally. Those market, for the domestic market, would actually still hold. The high-end market, because these are there's more the influence by investments, be it speculative or more conservative investors, as well as foreign buyers. This is where we can see a bit of polarization or differentiation, because those areas which actually has a lot of demand or potential demand, be it for domestic market renters, or even there's the popular thing that people are actually buying for is Airbnb, for example. People still look for those opportunities, and it is still around in the market.
So that's all about in 2024 and how we can actually summarize the whole market situation last year. But looking ahead to 2025, how will perhaps the slower economic growth can actually affect the whole situation, especially when the geopolitical tensions affect the global economic shifts, like you mentioned earlier, and it gives ripple effect on local markets. So my question is, how can stakeholders prepare to navigate these potential obstacles, Sulaiman?
I think investors today are even more prudent than ever before. I think that the lessons learned from how the world actually reacted to the unfortunate global pandemic brought by COVID at that time, it actually wakens up everybody in terms of making sure that whenever you make an investment decision or even a policy decision, how do we mitigate risk? This being said, I think there's a lot more awareness in the market, and we'll actually do a lot of consultation internally as well as with external experts also. And that being said, there's a lot of opportunities, and people know the risk of generalization. People do not take it as a statement, as an overall statement that things are going up or things are going down. There's always opportunities as well as risk that people are actually looking at. So even within the residential market, or even within the office space, which is still linked with the lingering supply-demand mismatching in terms of the occupancy rate is still being challenging and whatnot. But there are opportunities even within the commercial market. If we look right now, there's flight to green or flight to quality, where new office spaces with better design, with the ESG elements and compliance matters are actually embedded within the offering, actually generate consistent demand, and these kind of buildings would still be in demand at the expense of the other non-compliant buildings, if you like.
And now let's touch a bit on the financing and also policy environment. In 2024, the overnight policy rate OPR hikes affected loan affordability for the middle income groups, and this year it is expected by BNM to actually maintain the rates by 3% until the end of the year. So how can you expect the overall market as a whole on affordability towards this middle income group?
I think the call to retain at 3%, meaning that we're not changing the OPR right now, is a good call. Considering the market has grown, and this is not just about the property market per se. This is actually for the overall economy, which includes property market segment. Of course, we talk about OPR being a key determinant in cost of funds for people to actually make their repayment for the mortgages and whatnot. So retaining that is actually a good call, because we are actually growing. The confidence is actually returning, but we do not want to disrupt that return or the momentum for now. We still need to actually have a accommodative policy like to retain the 3%. And that is even more so with the anticipated impact of removal of subsidies for RON 95, for example, the impact of SST's expansion, as well as the recently being highlighted TMB tariffs. TMB tariffs. So I think the 3% is actually fair for at this level, and if you look on an overall trend, 3% is actually of late a more recent average that has been actually within the market. It is higher than how it was during COVID times, but if we look before that, even the pre-pandemic level, the 3% is where it was.
Mm-hmm. And one more, will the changes in real property gains tax or RPGT, in 2024 actually helps to boost the secondary property market in 2025, or it will actually lead to more speculative activity?
RPGTs, I guess, into self-tax, self-assessment, and then new plans for RPGT. RPGT is actually a measure to actually curb speculation, but we also need to actually have some level of speculation that's where the market activity will actually move up because of with the more optimistic investors coming online. But in terms of RPGT right now, where we actually have in the country, I think it's actually a measure that is not to be enhanced any further. Basically, we shouldn't tighten it. We should actually allow the market to actually grow so that the confidence for both domestic as well as international confidence is actually strongly returning to the country, as well as allowing buyers, purchasers who actually purchase a property before, local Malaysians, and selling off right now, considering the cost of living and the overall cost of living right now, this is actually one of the ways for them to actually enhance their wealth as a private person.
Speaking of which, about cost of living, affordable housing remains a critical issue. So, in your opinion, Sulaiman, what strategies or policies do you think that we should implement or is essential in 2025 to ensure accessibility in all income levels of rakyat? And what can actually developers do to manage the oversupply of high-rise residential units?
You rightfully put. Affordability remains a key challenge, and this challenge is not just on Malaysian shores alone. It's actually a global issue. Affordability is actually a global issue. But looking to the Malaysian perspective, in addressing the B40s or the M40s, the mass market, all the programs that we actually have in line should actually continually to be supported. But at the same time, we need to actually have a more sustainable long-term strategy. The overall pricing mechanism, I think in terms of the cost of input, the cost of compliance, the development costs, as well as the income level. Affordability is also as important the role of input costs towards coming up with the pricing. It is also in terms of how affordable it is from the buyer's perspective. How much can they actually afford? So programs to actually inject more affordable houses in the market is to be continued. But at the same time, the control mechanism in terms of new supply coming online, the approval for it, making more prudent decision. I think today city councils, when they actually approve a new development, more questions are being raised and more studies are required to be done, so that a prudent decision is actually made in terms of whether the area requires the number of units, and those prices, are they actually marketable and sellable within the market, to avoid the overhang problem that we are still facing with, although it is actually improving of late. But yeah, those are the long-term strategies that we really need to look at, as well as it must be a multi-stakeholders angle, be it from the buyers' perspective, from the developers' perspective, regulators' perspective, as well as financiers. The banks actually plays an important role as well to actually help mitigate the situation.
All right, maybe one last question before we end this session. Sulaiman, with the recent establishment of the Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone, JS-SEZ, what do you believe will be the most profound and lasting impact on the property market in Johor? And how should investors position themselves to capitalize on these changes? And perhaps a little bit of outlook for this year of property market.
Johor, in the past 2 years, if we look at the number of transactions, how it has actually rebounded, is one of the returning stars, if you like, the returning stars. If they were performing very well before, but then they came with the situation of oversupply situation because of the interest was so intense over there, where the market didn't actually, the demand growth didn't actually follow suit. The focus with JS-SEZ is to actually spur more interest in investment for actual economic activities. There's all the different regions from Sedenak to the rest of the whole Iskandar Malaysia region, for the Johor region. We can see that these activities or the investment is expected to come in. Only thing is, we need to actually make sure that the alignment of new infrastructures that are actually coming online would actually be suited to the investors that are actually coming in, to actually make sure that they actually have more confidence in the commitment by the government. But that being said, the infrastructure works that was done 20 years ago throughout for the Johor region, it has actually improved a lot of situation. Only now that it's almost like saying that the hardware is pretty much there, although there's still enhancements to be done. Is the software that we need to actually improve on, so that's where the investors' confidence will actually come in.
Thank you so much to Surveyor Sulaiman Zahid, the Director of Research at Rahim & Co International Sdn Bhd, for sharing your insights on Malaysia's property market. And we appreciate your time and expertise in helping us understand the challenges and opportunities in this year, 2025 as well. And you can find this whole conversation and discussion on all of our social media platforms, and that includes astroawani.com. See you next time.
Kementerian Dalam Negeri memberi lampu hijau supaya pengesanan dadah dilakukan terhadap pengguna web.
Tahap integriti warga polis Diraja Malaysia PDRM masih membimbangkan walaupun peringatan dan amaran diberikan berulang kali.
Anwar menegaskan bahawa negara ini tidak mengiktiraf Israel secara de jure meskipun keberadaan negara itu di peringkat antarabangsa.
Malaysia tidak akan meminda peta sempadan maritim dan tetap mempertahankan kawasan dan kedaulatan negara di Laut Cina Selatan.
A brand new day, a brand new stadium.
Musim kedua, lebih mencabar, lebih hebat.
Kita dah compete 4 orang. So sekarang ni kita nak pergi mana ni?
Kita nak bawa korang ke tempat yang susah-susah orang nak masuk.
Perjalanan epik menyelami Premier League.
Today challenge is
cabaran demi cabaran menanti mereka.
Masa berjalan.
Takkanlah saya nak kalah juga.
KLTPL,
mulai 23 Januari, jam 11 malam di Astro Ria dan Astro Go. Hello KL, raikan tahun baharu bersama Astro di Pavilion KL dengan bintang-bintang sensasi. 12 Januari, artis TVB Brian Chu dan Cicely Choi. 18 Januari, geng baharu from KL to PL bersama legenda Johan. 25 Januari, temu mesra eksklusif superstars Emerald Hill Media Corp dan berhibur bersama artis-artis Astro. Anda boleh menangi pas sesi foto Astro Rewards. Hiburan tanpa henti bersama kami di Astro.
Asia Tumpuan Utama Dunia Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI pada perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina. Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now, today on Analysis, we look at business trends 2025 with a focus on balancing life and technology. So, of course, the relationship between humans and technology is undeniably shifting and increasingly complex. Now, Accenture's Life Trends Report 2025 surveyed more than 24,000 respondents across 22 countries in July 2024 to identify and validate emerging digital trends and actions for businesses to take in 2025 via crowdsourced insights and intelligence. So, some of the findings include that inflation and the cost of living crisis are driving a desire towards working smarter, not harder, and of course, deeply influencing consumer behavior. So this clearly presents new opportunities for businesses to cater to today's informed consumer while balancing the risk profile of digitization and online realities across age demographics. This, of course, also includes children in today's day and age. Azwan Baharuddin, who is Country Managing Director with Accenture Malaysia, joins me now live in our studios to share more on these insights. Azwan, a very good morning. Thanks so much for making time for us. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you, Tehmina. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, great way to start off the year by speaking about Accenture's brand new report. Tell me a little bit more about some of the key trends which have been highlighted. It's introducing a couple of new terminology, but at the same time, the concepts are, I think, what we've already been feeling in society as a whole, right?
Yes, it's very interesting, right? So I think there are 5 trends, actually, and when I say it, you begin to connect the dots because you kind of feel it, but you don't quite see it. But with the 24,250 responses worldwide, you can actually visualize it now, right? So there are 5. So the first one is the cost of hesitation. So this is interesting, right? So you know this concept where people say it all the time. It's like barang order, barang dapat.
Yes, the comparison.
It's completely different. So last time, if you think about it, we used to believe everything that we read, it must be fact.
Right.
Then over time, well, you realize it isn't. So then what consumers do today is they look at the ingredients like, you're looking at the, when you go to the shops, does it have this, that, or the other? Like someone looking, make sure that it's halal, right? So they have a certificate, does it have this kind of ingredients? So it's different. So what happens is then the trust erodes because I can no longer believe what I see online, so to speak.
And I want it fast, I want it quick.
Yes, I want it fast, I want it quick. But then it used to be, yep, I believe. And now with all the stuff that you see, well, can you believe? So then, therefore, what people look for when you order online are the reviews, right? So
absolutely. I go to the reviews first. That's my instinct.
Yeah. So even when you have, after reading first 6, you got 5 stars, and then 1 or 2 get 1 or 2 stars, and then you go, why
maybe not.
Yeah, not so consistent, right? So that's one, cost of hesitation. That's interesting, right? So if people don't trust you, people wouldn't buy from you, right? So I think that's challenging. Number 2, the parent trap. So parents are now, you used to see parents kind of letting kids watch YouTube or whatever it is, right? Online, all the applications, etc.
Like a substitute parenting tool.
Yes, you see them in restaurants, right? They put there. But then you have to, I think parents today are looking for kind of virtual seat belts, right? Safety, right?
Absolutely.
To make sure that, what their children see is moderated, so to speak, right? I think we used to think about, I'm sure somebody will moderate. But not true, because if it's a global content, it's easily accessible. It's very hard to get.
And not just global content, but just this week alone, Meta, via Mark Zuckerberg, has announced that they are no longer employing human moderation for online content. So that those are entire platforms. You've got Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and what have you.
Yes, all at the same time. Yeah. So then the third one, the third one is impatience economy. Right? So this one is obvious. So everybody today wants to get the services fast. They want it now. We used to be more patient. But today, we're just not anymore. So, but this one hits mainly three. You got health, finance, and entertainment, right? So these three, people are constantly impatient. They're always looking for alternative solutions every day.
Shortcuts.
Yeah, shortcuts. You know why? Because it's accessible. It's online, right? So you can check. But then the problem is, when you read even, is that even true? So, you know, you go to the doctor sometime.
Right.
So, oh, I read on the internet that I've got this disease. I think I've got this.
Yes.
And
the doctor just puts on his glasses and says, no, I don't think so.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, trust my 35 years of experience, you don't have whatever you think you have, right? But the experience comes to play. And then, of course, you have dignity of work. This one's interesting because as tools and technology, AI replaces people, so to speak, you know, when they are much better at and faster at, imagine that you're going to do an event. You can take 7 people to think about the event for the whole week before you come up with a potential agenda theme.
Right.
And today you can go to Gen AI and say, you know, as we're discussing, you put the...
Exactly. If you input the right and appropriate prompts, you're going to get it the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
straight off the bat, right? But actually, what happens is people feel demotivated. So what they want is, you know, a bit of respect, a bit of dignity, and something to kind of make them come to work.
To feel of value at the very least.
To be valued, exactly. To be part of whatever's going on as opposed to just machine. And you have this new concept called social rewilding. So this is a new concept, even for me. This is when, actually, I think we used to like doing everything virtually. We attended virtual concerts at one point, right? So you had to pay to even attend virtual concerts.
That's right.
But then people don't want that now. So they're saying, hey, you know what? I want to go back to out there, interact with people. I want to do yoga at the beach with many people. I want to do so many things, but I want to do it with people. So these are the 5 things. That's what's happening. That is shifting from, I think, during COVID, where we're extreme digital, to the point that we got digital fatigue, and now we're saying, hey, you know what? We are humans are social animals, right? So we need to connect with people. So these are the 5 things that's happening in the world right now.
So I think it's really interesting because I think Accenture's report is helping to actually capture what we've been feeling across time. That brings us to the next big area as one, which is, of course, so how then can we play a part in ensuring that this becomes a part of our life? Mindfulness comes up, but how can mindfulness be an effective enough tool, especially when you're looking at not just organizational culture, but societal culture these days, which is all about going faster, doing more in less time?
Yes, and I think what we're becoming today, every day, you know, when you go social media, you do this, right? Endless scrolling, right? So you just do this and this and this.
And Malaysian spends about roughly on average 7 hours plus a day doing that.
That's incredible, actually. Yeah. Probably stuck in traffic or in the train.
Yes, very true.
But actually, that's incredible. So mindfulness is about asking yourself, is this thing adding value for me today, right? So I think when you look at companies or products today, then you have, you know, when you measure screen time, for example, right? Because you forget. This is when you go to bed, and you do this, and I think a lot of people realize sometimes the phone falls on your face when you're trying to go to sleep.
I think we've all been guilty of that at some point, yeah.
So the other bit is also, people also understand that the algorithm are much better right now. So the challenge is, public opinion is shaped very much by the technology, and AI has this ability to form massive public opinion and to shift even voting sometimes, or public opinion on a particular subject. So I think people are more aware of that, so they question themselves whether the opinion that they have is actually their opinion, actually something they've read, and what is solidified with conversations with other people who saw the same content, and they all kind of agree, this is our opinion. Right. Actually, they didn't necessarily look out there, right?
Very true. So I think the lack of critical thinking sometimes, it's actually jolted a lot of people into a cycle of wanting to be curious about it again.
Yes, and you go with the herd, right? So everyone does this, so that's why you do that. But actually, people are getting tired of that, so to speak, right? So I think there's other bit is, you know, real life connections for stress relief. So even the study in the survey, right? One of the questions was, what the most meaningful thing that you did? 42% said, you know, all the fact that I went out for dinner and I went all the social activities was the most meaningful thing I did last week, and that's a big deal, I don't think we thought about that before. But now when you think about it, actually, you'd rather go out than sometimes order food in.
Yeah,
right? So
I think the difference a pandemic and lockdowns make to the human psyche, right?
Yes.
All right.
And the other one that is popular today is if you go for holidays, and a lot more people are looking for off-the-grid locations.
Yes,
right?
very true.
Because sometimes when you have connectivity, you still tend to work. You do.
Yes, by default.
You don't think you do, but you got to check the email. That what happened. So I think this kind of shutdown, digital detox kind of locations are going to be key.
Exactly, because the digital detox once again comes back to a keen desire for mindfulness. So let's talk about companies and how they need to be working in 2025 as one to address issues of consumer trust, specifically because, of course, a lot of the bulk of our purchases, for example, everything almost happens online.
Tehmina, that's a great point, and trust is key, as we mentioned before. But I think in this case, transparency matters. What do I mean by that? For example, just like the ratings, for example, whenever you take, for example, ride-hailing, right?
Sure.
Home, etc. You want to know the rating of the driver, right? You want to be able to share your location to your loved one, because if something happens, somebody knows about it.
There's accountability built into the system.
So that's how they differentiate. But it's not just safety, but it's confidence that the driver is a good one. It's not going to take you around, etc. But then you have the situation that's also reversed. The driver also wants to know whether this guy is going to pay. Are you going to pay or not? Right?
Very true.
Etc. Right? Or because you got drunk every night and they're not pleasant, right?
Very true, very true. There's concerns on both sides when it comes to the consumer experience.
Yes, so that level of transparency, is key, right? Because you cannot just believe anymore. You cannot assume anymore. Then there are other companies, like a fast food chain here, that work with the social media folks to kind of create narratives that make sense, from their product to communities around them.
Right.
So I think that's also important. And then perhaps the last one is, explaining and resolving issues quickly. For example, when you had some messaging platforms, for example, people were concerned whether can the government read this? Can somebody hack into this? And then you say, hey, you know what? Then they come out and say, how the encryption system works, right? And then hundreds of millions of people got more confidence in trying to make sure that, okay, when they communicate, actually it's safe, it's secure. And that's important as well. So that drives. If it's not, then people choose other platforms that are, because there's so many of them you can choose from.
Yes, exactly. So I think the decentralization, which became a key feature of life and digital life, I think middle of 2024, is something that is probably going to continue. So what risks do you foresee businesses facing, Azwan, if on the flip side, they are unable to address the impatience and heightened expectations which all consumers are actually experiencing? And I'm also talking about the risks faced by both established entities as well as startups.
Oh no, so you risk being irrelevant very, very quickly because the population is very fickle and the population is getting younger. Did you know that the last boomer retired 31st December last year?
Oh, nice. Okay, that's a very interesting data point. So 31st December. Okay, it's a
that's 60 years
generational
old.
Shift actually occurred.
Literally just occurred in 2025.
Right.
So you have much younger population dominating business today. So you kind of have to cater for the demands, right? But then there are three, I said earlier, like health, for example, right? If you don't enable virtual appointments, so today insurance companies you can do virtual appointments with your doctor, and then the medicine can be delivered straight to your house, right? That's instant gratification. I get my medicine quickly, I get to see a doctor quickly. I'm sick. You expect me to go down to the clinic and drive, right, and get checked, and you got a fever, right? So actually, doctor can say any other symptoms. If none, then send you the medicine. So that's one.
And when you mention health as one, I think it immediately brings up the increasing concerns, not just in Malaysia, but globally, especially with regards to Gen Z, who make up about 30% of workers now, mental health, right? So that's another huge accessibility issue that becomes a part of whether or not a business or an employment structure is actually going to succeed.
No, absolutely. I think for Gen Z's mental health is absolutely critical. So I've never, in my past, you know, I think a lot of people say, you know, you're tough, you don't need all these things. But actually, the situation has changed. The pressure is much more real and is faster, right? You're not competing with your fellow colleagues, you're competing with a machine.
Very
right?
true.
So trying to make sure that you continue to be relevant is a real issue, right? So everything's moving too fast and people can't cope. Mental health is absolutely key. I think a lot of organizations perhaps don't put a lot of emphasis on mental health, but at Accenture, we do it a lot. It's absolutely critical because the work is so intense.
Kind of having it built into your structure rather than only addressing it when an emergency occurs, right?
Yes, kind of proactively engage, as opposed to, because when I've had conversations with folks that really have mental health issues,
right,
it's not easy, it's tough. So, and I found when I had the conversations, right, the folks are educating me because they're reading it more than what I'm reading because they're suffering it today. So even when I read quickly and try to have the conversation, they can quote from which book I was talking from. So it's incredible. So you've got to be able to keep up and with these folks. The other one is fintech.
Okay.
So fintech, if you look at it, so I spoke to some of the folks in the banking industry, and what they say to me is that, you know, Rozman, we're trying to remain composed. But actually, everyone's panicking because there's so many products out there, from, you know, crypto to digital banks to insurance companies. Everybody's providing fantastic, you know, products today. But in fact, you find the traditional banks are still pushing old products, right? So you are looking at all these new things that you're reading. You read something yesterday about, you know, this crypto that's about to be launched. Then somebody brings you very traditional fixed deposit type product that you're not interested in.
That's
so
right.
I think
and the login may not work too well on the app. So,
no.
Yeah, there you go.
No. And actually, the survey found that in the finance industry,
right,
28 of the respondents actually had a side hustle.
Side hustle.
Sorry. Side
hustle.
hustle.
Yeah, well, you could say it's a bit of a hassle too.
Yeah, but no, but that's what they have. So because they're always looking for something new, because the banks, traditional banks, are not providing them. And of course, entertainment.
So all of this is actually speaking to the fact that things keep going faster and faster, especially in the work life. So when it comes to entertainment, I think one data point that I actually kind of resonated with, because give you a quick example. Yes, it says on the research that, you know, people are listening to podcasts faster. I actually find myself doing that sometimes at ×2, ×3 of speed. Why? Because sometimes it just feels like time is going too slow when you have to follow a certain slower train of thought, even though it's just wildly elucidated.
No, I think that's a great point. And that's what we find. So when we look at branding or trying to put messaging across to the market, now we're telling customers to play back or the ad at 2 times the speed. People don't have the patience to listen till the end. They just give me the crux of it, give me it quick.
So it needs to work at normal, but also at 2 times speed.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Gen Zs, millennials, look, give me 2 times. That's what, you know, when you look at, for example, YouTube, you have all those options, right? And that's what it's for. And so today, even in advertising, that's what everybody's going for.
It's being influenced, yes. You know those quick cuts that we see everywhere we look for video-like content? Absolutely. So that brings us to a really critical discussion area, Aswan, which is looking at the rise of AI and automation. And this, of course, is reshaping the nature of trust itself between employers and employees. So what more can organizations do, especially as the most interesting juncture is finally here in 2025? No longer are there 5 generations under one roof in basically any organization. Now you've basically got roughly about 3 or 4.
Yeah, so trust on the back of AI. I think what we find today is also, you know, in the past, whenever you have town halls and then the leaders come to you and say, you'll be fine, it's great, nobody believes that anymore at all, because they can read. They're reading about your company from the outside in, not from inside out. So when the leader says everything is fine, and then next thing you know, you're going to lay off 500 people, etc., etc. So the trust is an issue. Worse still, when they're trying to bring in Gen AI.
Right.
So the insecurity about, are they trying to relieve me of my job? Are they trying to get rid of me? So many companies, especially multinationals in the US, for example, they have conversations about Gen AI, about they allow the mass population of workers to ask what's happening in Gen AI. The other bit is another company does, hey, you know what? I'm going to train all of you in data science and AI because I value human beings in my organizations. So not necessarily replacing humans, but providing humans with bionic arms to do and be more productive, etc. So I think that's
yeah, that's the ideal situation.
Yes.
However, at the same time, though, how many companies are really able to foster that culture where they can depend on the hybrid, but at the same time value the human employees which they have?
It's difficult. As I tell you what the report gave me the stat was,
Sure.
which was in Malaysia, only 29% of employees trust their leaders to prioritize their well-being. So that's a problem, because I think it's either a communication bit, it's either leadership doesn't understand what Gen AI can bring or what technologies bring, because the field is automation, isn't it? So, but I think the conversation is going to be absolutely key, and you have to repeat again and again. So I think if you say you commit, I'm going to reskill all of you to make sure that you're relevant to my organization, to the world out there, then there's a bit more trust. If you stay silent and say, we're just experimenting, just experimenting means what? So I think that's a big issue for most people, especially the ones that do repetitive tasks.
Very true. Yeah.
Right? So
who
they're
are
afraid.
most at risk, actually.
Yeah. So they say, so how would you redeploy me? So CEO says, Azwan, can we create capacity? Create capacity can be two things. Create capacity could be, I need to reduce my workforce, or create capacity so that I can redeploy to have more meaningful touch points for all my customers, for example. In Malaysia, I find it's mainly that, the latter.
Right, the latter. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is about preserving the workforce, making them do more meaningful jobs. I think that's what's happening in Malaysia. But it's not easy, as you said. It's not easy because people don't proactively do this because they're trying to figure out what to do. A lot of people are more informed. When you're younger, you're actually more informed because you're always,
socially aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you begin to distrust. So that's a problem.
That's interesting because I think it brings us into the opportunity to zoom in on the youngest sector of the workforce a little bit more. So what essentially can organizations do effectively as one now to ensure that they are, number one, attracting, but also more importantly, perhaps retaining young talent? We're talking about those who are below 28, 30, right? We're not actually talking about those who are a little older than that. And they, of course, make up a huge cohort in Malaysia. Our median age as of 2025 is 30.7 years of age. So we're a pretty young country still. Yeah.
And this compared to Japan, where they're retiring 800,000 people a year, so which is different.
Exactly. And Europe, where the median age is close to 44. So we really have that benefit. But how do we ensure that those young people are actually going to be a part of the workforce? Yeah.
I think the young folks like to be flexible. They like hybrid. I'll come and I'll work wherever, right? So you can work from anywhere. I think that works for some companies, not for all, because it depends what industry you're in. Because you producing something in the factory, you've got to be in the factory.
That's right.
But for service industry, for example, you don't have to. But you have to allow them the flexibility. So the KPIs is more about measure my output, my outcome, and not my hours, or whether you see me working or not. Because that's a trust issue, right? So some of the folks say, you're working from home, but are you really working? It doesn't help that some people actually go shopping. It doesn't help. But,
true. We've seen those reports. We have.
I think that's what you want. And the other one is what's important also, and it's very strong, purpose-driven culture. What is our purpose? So I think in the old days, you could get away with, hey, you know what? You work to live, kind of like, okay, I need my paycheck to live day to day. But today, the bar is very, very high. I want to make a difference to Earth as a planet, to my communities, to my family, for example. So I think if you provide purpose, not from an organization perspective only, but also at the individual level, your purpose is to make sure that we and you, blah, 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 actually makes a difference. Because everybody wants to feel valued. Why? Because the social media influence, it seems to point that everybody has a role, everybody's successful, everybody's changing saving the climate or something like that. Right?
Doing big things. So I think it's about reframing what does it mean to do big things, right? All right.
Yes.
So Aswan, I think let's spend a little bit of time closing out the conversation with an undeniable concern. The safety of children, especially in the online space, and how companies, regardless of who they are, you don't have to be the social media giant to have a most responsible approach, especially as we are increasingly disappointed by the type of regulations that have been coming out.
You know, first it's about education. It's about telling people what's right and what's wrong. The challenge today is, you know, while you have, for example, a culture that you want to drive, the reality of it is culture is now driven globally. So if the content from, say, the domestic, the Malaysian market is not as good, it's not as strong, they are attracted to content overseas, and it's very hard to manage. So for the big players, for example, you have parental controls. So it's good. So I think from that perspective, parents will have more trust to kind of those platforms. But as we do everything, not just children, but also sustainability. So we've got to put everything in play so it protects both, protects the planet, protects our children. And any company that has some form of parental controls or manages or moderates content to the point that it protects the young. For example, social media in Australia, right? You cannot sign on social media until 16 years old.
Yes, it's a very new law.
Yes, a very new law. And I don't know how the young ones take it because they've probably been on it for...
Enforcement perhaps would be very difficult, especially for the existing generation.
Yes. Yeah, but the government could probably one day say, without digital ID, you cannot have social media. You got all this licensing, etc. So it's interesting. So there are many things you could do. It's just whether there's necessarily political will to do it, because it's not an easy topic, and the technology changes all the time. It's very hard to catch up. You set something up, something else comes up, and then how do you kind of protect people from this as well? So I think education, regulation, participation from both government and private sector is going to be critical in ensuring that children are protected, because they are our future. They cannot be corrupted by all sorts of thinking, because it's even for us when we consume. Is this even, are UFOs real?
Yeah, exactly. So really about verification.
Yeah, that's right.
Aswan, it's been such a fantastic and insightful conversation. Thanks so much for your insights today on Niaga Spotlight.
Thank you, Tehmina, for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. That's all the time we have for today on Niaga Spotlight, featuring Aswan Baharuddin, who's Country Managing Director with Accenture. We'll see you next Friday with more business and economic analysis and insights. I'm Tehmina Kaoosji, signing off. Here's to a productive week ahead.